Hello. I've just got a few places to post about this and then we'll get started. I've just got a few places to post about this and then we'll get started. I've just got a few places to post about this and then we'll get started. I've just got a few places to post about this. What are we going to do? We are going to color this prehistoric animal. What are we going to do? We are going to color this prehistoric animal. What are we going to do? We are going to color this prehistoric animal. What are we going to do? We are going to color this prehistoric animal. We are going to color this prehistoric animal. There's an echo. There's an echo. See if there's an echo now. I think I had the chat, the Twitch page open. I think it was doing that. I know I'm terrible at planning these things. I apologize. Just like, oh, I'm in the mood to stream tonight, so. Alright, let's do that. I'm going to be starting here in just a second, guys. Okay, cool. All right, let's see. Why do you keep going dark? There we go. Oh, I've got a green screen I'm trying out tonight. This is the other reason I wanted to test this, so. Looks like it's working. Be right back. Okay. All right, so does this sound okay? You guys let me know. I've crash landed on Mars, and I was testing my new green screen, and I don't know. I was thinking about space because why was I thinking about space? I was some documentary or something I was watching. let's see. There we go. For some reason, I do much better with these when I can hear myself. There we go. All right, testing 1, 2. Yeah, we're good. So yeah, I was just testing my green screen out, and it was just the first picture I thought about. Mars. There we go. I was gonna try to do something like cooler than that, but I was like, what would be a cool like famous office? And I couldn't think of anything. But then I just realized I might do Michael Scott's office. I could do that behind me. I don't know. All right. So, in case this ever ends up on YouTube, I'm going to do a quick intro. And we'll get started. So, welcome everyone to the stream. My name is K. Michael Russell. I am a comic book colorist and digital artist. And welcome. And I'm missing something. I will leave it for now. So this is a piece by Steve Becker, he's one of the first guys that I ever like started following on like when I started wanting to get back into comics again. I came across Steve and some other guys that were in like a small press Facebook group, and right off the bat, I loved his stuff, and so I followed him ever since, and I've met him I think a couple of times, like I think at Heroes a couple of years ago, and oh, by the way, this is gonna be very like, yeah, I should have done like a T-Rex behind me, yeah. This is gonna be very low-key stream tonight. It's not gonna be like in a mad rush to finish this or anything. I'm gonna be chipping away at this probably for a while. But Steve is working on a, I think it's like a coffee table type book. I don't really know what those are called. You know, big book of illustrations of prehistoric animals, and he's done a ton of research. It's really obvious on all of these characters, and I know he's been working on it for a long time. Like when this is, it's going to be a Kickstarter, I think, eventually, or Indiegogo or something, and. But yeah, I'm a big dinosaur fan, and as soon as he started posting art from that, I was thinking, man, I want to be involved in this. So I asked if he had any use for me on anything, and I think he's going to be, I don't know if he's coloring it himself or if it's going to be black and white or what the situation is going to be, honestly. But yeah, he sent me a ton of choices, and I like this one. It's and I wrote down the name somewhere. Let's see. Forest Rackus. I'm going to forget that. But yeah, that's what this animal is called, the big one. I don't know what the little one is. It had a long name, but for kind of one-off pieces like this, I like to you know, it's not something I'm going to have to duplicate a million times. It's just, you know, one pin-up basically. So I like to experiment, I guess, on these sort of things. And but anyway, I forgot to say the name of the book is A Story in Stone, which I think is fantastic. It's just a great name. And so it's going to be in there somehow, or he's going to use it for promo, or I don't know if it's going to get printed or not. Hopefully it does. And but I think I want to try like a grayscale to color thing with this, which is not something I've done a ton of. I have done it before. I've even got a Procreate kind of how-to on the process. So I just want to talk about, I was trying to talk about that a little bit as I'm going through it. And but really, I just kind of want to hang out tonight and you know, talk to you guys and answer questions or whatever you guys want to talk about. And so yeah. I'm tired of staring at the screen. You guys probably are too. So there's no flats on this. I've done this once before also. I'm just going to paint it basically. And as I go more and more into it, I'll tighten it up more and more. But it's going to be kind of loose to begin with, and I'm just going to try to work out what I want the values to be like first, and then we'll convert that to color at some point. But so yeah, we'll see.
feathers or no feathers. This one definitely has feathers. I don't know what family it's in. Steve could probably tell you, but it's definitely like a prehistoric bird-like creature. So we kind of chatted about the colors of the actual creature. Obviously, we don't really know what color that these things are. But we looked at reference for birds and predatory animals that live in jungles and things like that, and so I think I've got an idea about what I want to do with that. But I'm just going to sort of play that out as we go through with this. So, but the bird is going to be dark relative to most of the image. So I'll probably go lighter on most of this around him, but. So yeah, I'm just going to kind of start scribbling on this, and like I said, if you guys have questions, feel free to ask. I'll try to keep one eye on the chat here. Someone asked, how's the shoulder doing? It's doing good. I started physical therapy 2 weeks ago. I guess I'm on my second week, or the start of the third. I think this is the second week, and that sucks. The physical therapy is really, really hard. It's actually more painful than anything else that I've had to do with this shoulder, except for maybe like the first 2 or 3 days. So so yeah, it's no fun at all. And I haven't not put a single thought into this yet. I literally just picked it up, and so I'm thinking, since the bird's going to be dark. The bird's going to be dark, and so I want all this sky back here to be light, and the trees will probably be somewhere in the middle. That's my theory anyway. We'll see if that changes. And I'm not really used to working in this particular style, so we will figure this out as we go. I was watching Nick Filardi on Twitch not too long ago, and I like the fact that he has no qualms about just trying stuff and seeing what happens, and he was kind of playing around with a very like painterly thing the other day, and he's trying to figure out working with mask and coloring, and so I kind of like that. I was like, you know what, I can do that. I can try to get out of my comfort zone here and see what happens. So I'm starting with like a middle gray is my base, and I'm just doing that because it makes it easy to see, what's lighter and what's darker than that. So if you've got like a middle tone there, then it's easy to see that well, this is lighter than that or this is darker than that, and this is going to start off really, really rough. I'm going to sort of, and it's going to be unlike most of the stuff you guys are probably used to seeing on the channel, but it's been a long day. It's just been one of those days that didn't want to end, and I was like, I need to do something fun. But yeah, the PT man, like I thought, like he was gonna pull my arm off the other day. I mean, it needs it. Like I can't. Like they don't want me using the shoulder muscles yet. Like even to lift the arm on its own. I can stretch the arm out with the other arm, and I can, pin it against things and stretch, and I can put it on the table and stretch it. But they don't really want me using those shoulder muscles yet in any significant way. And so basically, I'm very limited in what I can do with the arm now, and that'll get better as I go forward. But all that stuff has to heal right the first time, or you're gonna have a bad time. So, so yeah, I'm following instructions, and I'm being a good patient, trying to be anyway. But yeah, we're just going to sort of throw some stuff around and build this up, and smudging things and messing things around, and eventually we'll
hopefully get it to a spot that we like it. And I think what I want to do is possibly have, you know, he's in a forest here, so I think I want to have like some light coming through the trees onto him, and we'll focus it on the right places. So, you know, I'm thinking like this part will sort of be the brightest part of him, and then we'll have the rest of it kind of dip into shadow with some spotty, you know, leafy shaped light sources hitting him and that kind of thing. And I think I'm going to go with like a mostly dark colors on the bird, you know, for the majority of them. But then I'm going to do like his head and his neck like brighter colors, you know, blues and oranges and reds and stuff, and see where this goes. But I find just doing stuff like this to be kind of relaxing sometimes, and after a day I feel like I need it. Is this kind of like how Drew Struzan works? Sort of, yeah. I think, I mean, I'm not an expert on his process. I do have one of his videos, his Hellboy poster DVD. I need to go back and watch that again, because something I realized recently is that there's stuff that I watched like 2 or 3 years ago. I was like, man, this is a really cool tutorial. And then I accidentally, or actually, somehow I came across a video I'd watched on YouTube a while back and watched it again, like after myself learning a lot and you know, study and things like that. And, you know, I was picking up on things I didn't pick up on the first time. You know, there was something that I might have seen that I thought, oh, well, that doesn't quite make sense to me, or that's confusing. And it wasn't the teacher's fault. It was just, or the instructor, whoever's doing the tutorial. It was just that I hadn't got to a point where that made sense yet. And so I've kind of made a habit lately to try to every now and then go back and rewatch things I watched before, and I pick up on things that I didn't pick up the first time. So, but yeah, I need to go back and watch that DVD again. It's really, really good. And even though like he's working traditionally, like that stuff's, a lot of that stuff still applies, you know. There's you know, a jillion ways and different tools and techniques and things and ways to do this sort of stuff, but a lot of the principles are very similar, you know. Of course, there's some techniques that might not have an equivalent, but it's usually kind of a one-sided thing. Like, I would say almost, not all, surely not all, but a lot of traditional methods have some sort of digital equivalent. Now, it doesn't work the other way around. You know, there's a lot of things digitally that's just totally impossible to do with you know, with any kind of traditional medium. But I've found that it doesn't work that way with all things. You know, there's a lot of times there's a way usually to make almost anything work digitally, and so I've stolen a couple of tricks from him from that DVD. A lot to do with how he uses texture to sort of trick you into thinking that there's more happening than there really is. So yeah, thanks. About the shoulder, it's getting there. It'll still be another, I think it's going to be another 6 weeks or so, 5 or 6 weeks before I'm actually able to do any sort of strength training. Like, everything right now is strictly
you know, range of motion and stretching, and it's all passive, you know. So so yeah, I'm looking forward to actually getting able to trying to lift something again. One thing that Procreate does, and it's actually smart, it's just it can be a little annoying at times, is one of the reasons why it's always smooth. Like it never jitters, it never lags, it never like does anything that I just realized my brightness is a little low. Just trying to match match my desktop. You guys are seeing this brighter than me right now. I don't know if that brightened for you or if that was... No, I guess it didn't. I guess it's the same. What was I talking about? Like I said, it's been one of those days. Let's see. Oh, yeah, I guess it is similar. Someone tell me what I was talking about. If anyone's listening. Because it just flew right out of my head. Oh, smooth. Yeah, thank you. So one of the things that it does is, you know, in Photoshop, like if you get a really big brush, especially a brush that has like a ton of texture, it will slow down. You know, it'll like be jittery and lag. What Procreate does is it limits the size of the brush the more complex it is. So like a really big, simple, soft, round brush like this one, you know, it can be huge. You know, it can be massive, and it doesn't, you know, it doesn't slow down. It doesn't do anything because the brush itself doesn't take a lot of CPU. It doesn't require a lot of work, you know, from a computer standpoint. But like this marker that I'm using, it's got some texture to it. You know, uh, it's got a lot of stuff, you know, happening. I know it's really, you guys probably can't see, but you know, it's got a little bit of texture. So it's a more complicated alpha, I guess, for that brush. So Procreate just limits the size. You know, it forces you to make it smaller. It doesn't allow you to make it big enough to make it lag. So it can be a little frustrating at times, but it's also pretty smart because their app is always super smooth for that reason. So, and if I cared enough, I could probably tweak that brush or something and make it like do more of what I want here, but it's just not that big of a deal most of the time. And someone always asks, but this is the flat marker. It's pretty much my favorite Procreate brush. It's a default brush. Now by default, I messed up the other day and someone said, I'm using this brush and it keeps darkening and I can't get it to quit darkening. By default, this brush is set, if you go under general, it's set to multiply. And if you're familiar with digital art at all, you know multiply always darkens. So the only thing that I did to it was set the mode to normal instead of multiply. I think everything else is just whatever comes with it, you know. And at this stage, I'm just, you know, I'm trying to make it work at a very small scale. Like I want it to read like this, you know. And like that tree behind them is a little dark now compared to them, and I really don't want that to compete. So I'm just going to lighten this whole tree up a little bit. I'm going to give it a stronger focal point. And at this stage, all I'm really thinking is, the further back that I go, things will be lighter, as there's more atmosphere. And I'm actually going to probably, toward the end, I'm going to lighten up these lines and do some colors over the lines. But for now, it's just about getting the big shapes to read, and that's basically it. And then the further we get into it, then I'll start, cleaning this up and tightening things up a little bit. And but the reason that I'm working with the values first, if you haven't worked in this method before, basically it forces you obviously to just think in terms of the values and just black and white. You don't have to think about color at all. And values are like, they're 99% of what matters when it comes to color. Like if your pages, and all my students in my courses probably get tired of me hearing this, or the YouTube subscribers and everybody, but it's by far the most important thing is to make sure your values are good and make sure that they read and make sure everything makes sense, because the colors just don't matter, honestly, that much. Like, they matter to an extent, obviously, but if your values are out of whack, then it's just not gonna work. And I actually want more contrast around his head, so that's why I'm kind of brightening this a little bit more. And I'll probably even strengthen this effect more later with like some glows or bloom effects or something like that. But I haven't really done a piece where I've just like really painted the crap out of it, and I think I want to try that on this. And this is getting probably borderline too dark, but I can always back this off. I want to be, there's just these shapes that I'm adding now, but I want it to, it's going to be in very few areas, very strategic areas of the piece. You don't want to go this dark everywhere. Like, even though if this bird was black, like, you can't use black, none of the lines are going to be able to be seen very easily. So in comics anyway, you typically want to avoid those really dark colors, and even though technically this isn't like a comic book, it's definitely like it's line art, and so I don't want to step all over the line art. And this is just a smudge tool. I'm just kind of messing around. And birds, we should pull up some reference. Let's see. My keyboard is way over here. So I'm going to show you guys what I'm looking at here. Why isn't that showing up? There we go. So, feathers are kind of shiny, like they're very reflective in places. The texture on them is pretty smooth, so they have a lot of what they call, you know, like specular type highlights. They're like where the highlights aren't really diffused or anything. So like this is the kind of stuff that, you know, I'll be throwing around too, and it's an easy thing to sort of cheat also, because you can use that to draw attention to the areas that, you know, you want to draw attention to. So like, you know, his beak's going to be really shiny, so like it'll have, you know, like a very, like a harder highlight on it, like something like that. But you also get, you know, I guess their eyes are dark too. But you can throw around those highlights in a strategic way also. And like, see how much that pops his eye off the rest of them? So we can sort of, and I'm going to do this on a separate layer just because I want to be able to like control how much of this shows up, because I might change my mind, which I probably will. But I'm still, you know, I'm thinking I'm not going to go follow every single feather on here. You know, you want to, you know, do it in places that you want to draw attention to. And again, I'll go in and we'll tighten this up later, but it's going to be something like that. But I haven't seen Steve colors his own work a lot, so I'm used. I don't know if I've seen too many other people work on his stuff, so I'm a little nervous. I hope he likes it, because that's always, you know, that's always can be a tough thing if you've got an artist that is really used to coloring themselves. Then it can be a challenge, because they know precisely what they want with the color a lot of times, and so it can be interesting. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Let me back up. I am missing. Where is the scroll bar? Okay, let's see. Sorry, I'm gonna catch up on the chat now. How did you sleep without hurting your shoulder after surgery? That is an excellent question. I was told that I wouldn't be able to sleep on my back because it pulls the shoulder too far back and it's gonna hurt. And so the first night, at first, I actually, I've got a recliner that lays pretty far back, but not completely. And let's see, can I pop this out? No. Yeah, sorry, this chat thing is being weird. And so the first night, like I said, I tried the recliner, and I don't really sleep that well in recliners. And so like halfway through the night, after I've tossed and turned, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to try to lay down. And I had no problem whatsoever. Like, I did put a pillow under it just to help support it, but other than that, I slept fine. I mean, I usually don't sleep on my back, so that was a little bit of getting used to, but I was on pain medicine at the time too, so that helps you sleep, obviously. But I really haven't had any issues with it, so I got lucky there, I think. All right, watching you work is very inspiring. Thank you. There's plenty of guys I like to watch for the same reasons. Okay, let's just merge that down. let's see. I'm looking up raven feet. Yeah, they're kind of smooth too, and actually have some harder harder edges on some of that, so we'll throw some of that white on there too. Let's see, I was catching up. Were we caught up? I would be worried about turning on my side in my sleep. Yeah, I forgot to mention, the first 3 weeks, the first 4, well, the first 2 weeks, I was in like an immobilizing sling. I'm doing this like you guys can see my arms. But basically, my arm was like stuck like this, you know. It was tied down at my torso and my side, so elbow couldn't move and my wrist couldn't move. That was actually the part that probably drove me crazy, was, you know, just being tied down like that. I was not a fan of that. So, that was a pain. But other than that, did okay. Yeah, I said I'm probably getting a little too detailed at this stage, but it's all right. And this will, if you're just joining us, this will eventually be color. I don't know if I'll start color tonight, but I might. Depends on how much of this I get through. Now this little guy is not going to be as reflective, you know what I mean? Because it's just fur. So he's going to be a little bit lighter. And the highlights are, I mean, he's going to have highlights, but they're not going to be as focused. They're not going to be like what they call specular type highlights, which are more those really hot spots and like the thing on your eye, a little reflection, like that's a specular highlight. But it's all about the surface texture of whatever you're doing. I mean, if it's really, really smooth, it's going to have a really, you know, really, really sharp, you know, highlight on that, you know. If I'm going to overdo it to prove a point, you know. So it's going to have very sharp, very intense lights. Now, you're going to be usually pretty small, or reflecting whatever light's around there. Think about, you know, look up pictures of like a, was it the cue ball, the white ball in pool? I'm always using billiards references. I never play, but I've played before. But it's a, if you look at that ball or any of the other balls, they're very, very reflective because they're very, very smooth. But then take a basketball, you know, or which is covered with leather or some type of whatever they're making them out of these days. It's got a lot of texture to it, you know. So the light is more diffuse when it's bouncing back. So it's not gonna, you're not gonna have those like pinpoint highlights on things. Which is something that a lot of beginners struggle with, especially with color, because they just think, okay, on every shape I'm going to put the same exact highlight, you know what I mean? And it just doesn't
doesn't really work out that way. So I'm just right now, like I said, I'm just kind of putting in color splotches. Is that a word? Splotch? And just mix them around and mixing it up. And what I found working this way is that the more detail you can put into it at this stage, the less work you have to do when you start adding color. I mean, there's still, you'll still have to, it's not like a coloring book, like I can just dump brown on this bird and it's going to work. You still have to add all those shifts to, the highlights will be shifting toward whatever color your light source is. It might get warmer or cooler. That's one really common mistake that a lot of people make working in black and white. They think is, okay, I did it in black and white, and now I'm gonna do this. I'll just show you guys real quick. So let's say this bird is, a brownish color, an orangey color. And I'm going to make this brush big so I don't have to take all day doing it. You can't just do this to the bird and be like, oh, he's done. Let's say I stayed in the lines there. It looks very dead and it looks very flat because there's no shifting of the hues at all. And when you're coloring, you don't just say brown is your base color and then go get a lighter brown and then a lighter brown for the highlights, and then a darker brown. It doesn't really work that way. You got to think about the color of the light and the environment and all that kind of stuff. So but one of the advantages of doing it this way is that you can focus more on the hues and not worry about the value as much when we get to the coloring stage. Let's see. I would like to watch more Colorist stream live. I can tell you why more probably don't, as a guess. We can very rarely show what we're working on. It's like every now and then, if it's like a more independent type book, like an image book or something, where the creator owns it or the writer owns the property, I can just ask, hey, do you mind if I put this page? Do this live, and usually I try to pick pages that are going to be in previews anyway, or they're going to be shown early. So like the big like how to think tutorial I did a few weeks ago, like that was the first 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 pages of that issue, because I know eventually that's going to be shown anyway. And I try to avoid any spoilers and things like that. But like if you're doing work for like DC or Marvel, I'm guessing, because I haven't done much of it, but I'm guessing that there's a lot more steps involved than just, hey, you can't just ask the writer, can I show this? You've probably got to go through several layers of editorial to get permission for that. So when you're someone like Marta Gracia, who I would love to see, do live streaming and more tutorials, it's tough to do because we can't show what we're doing most of the time. So that's probably why. How long would a picture like this normally take you? Also, feel better. Thank you, number one. And as far as with this particular piece, I don't know what to tell you as far as like, hold on, I'm trying to move my the chat a little bit closer so I don't have to look all the way off the screen. There we go. I don't really do things like this very often. So I really don't know what to tell you as far as how long this is going to take. I mean, I'm guessing a couple of hours because there's a lot of detail, and I really want to, make this a very impressive piece, for this sort of drawing. He's obviously spent a whole lot of time, putting all these leaves and details in there. And if I were to just throw some color blobs on there, like, I'd be disappointed if I were him. So, I want to put a lot of detail in this too and kind of match what he's bringing to the table. And so, yeah, this one's going to be, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 hours, just guessing. And And then as far as like regular comic book pages, I would say my average is probably an hour and a half, hour, give or take. That's an average, which means there are pages that take less. There are pages that take way more, way a lot longer. So, but I'm fast though. Like and I'm not saying that like that's not like a braggy thing. Like I know that I'm fast. Like based on other people that I've talked to and how much work people get done. I know that I work pretty quickly. So, when I was starting out, I wanted to ask that question too, and I thought it mattered because you want to know, like, am I fast enough? Right? That's what everybody. Am I good enough? Am I fast enough? Oh my God, this guy does 8 pages a day. That's impossible. I quit. Like, as a beginner, you can't think that way. Number one, because I didn't start off this fast. And there are colorists that do 2 and 3 pages like in a full day, like, and I don't mean like an 8-hour work day, like, or 7 hour. Most of these people are putting in 10, 12-hour days. And like, I know, for example, I think she's talked about it before, so she wouldn't mind, but like Tamara Bonvillain's a friend of mine, and like her book Wayward, I don't know if you guys have ever seen that book, but check it out if you haven't. It's very, very detailed. Her rendering is extensive, so she might take 4, 5, 6, 7 hours, on some of the really big, double page, big splash pages with tons of detail. Like, that might be a full day's work, So it really just depends on your style and the artwork you're working on. There's pages that I've done in 25 minutes, and because they were very simple, or it was just, one thing, or it was something easy, and then there's pages that have taken me 3 and 4 hours. That's pretty rare, for me, because I don't work that level of detail very often. And my rendering style is relatively simple, I think. So, I mean, yeah, it's good to know, and I'm not saying like don't ask the question of anyone, but don't sweat that too much, because the more you do this, you're gonna get faster. Like, it's not like you can say, I'm gonna get faster today, like try to rush through it. Like, that doesn't work, But after you do 10 pages, 20 pages, 50 pages, you're going to pick up little tips and tricks, and, I can do this next time, that's going to be faster. And it's a very subtle thing that you just need to allow to happen, I think. When people start trying to, and I'm sorry I can't talk and draw at the same time, but, it's one of those things you just kind of have to allow that process to occur. Because, like I said, you just can't force it. And I with any success, I would think. That's my 2 cents anyway. And all of this stuff, this is my take. You could ask 10 colorists that question and probably get 10 answers. So, how big is that canvas? Canvas information. It is roughly 12 by 9, 11.8 by 8.8 at 400 DPI. I've made 781 strokes, and I've been in here for an hour, which is that about right already? Yeah, there's a lot of me just standing here looking at it, or sitting here looking at it. So I'm going to kind of just start cleaning some of this stuff up, and I might, because I think I'm at a decent place as far as like with the shapes of things and the values. I think I'm okay for now. So I'm going to start tightening this up some, and we'll see. I think this is sky. So yeah, I'm not ignoring the chat on purpose. I kind of have to dip in and out because otherwise nothing will happen. I'll just sit here and yammer and get no coloring done. And even at this stage, I'm not really worried about a finished
like pristine look or anything. Like I'm just sort of still building up to where I want it to be. And I'm doing a lot of color picking over here. There's a little button, the little square between the two sliders on the left. That's when you see that little wheel pop up, that's what you guys are seeing. It keeps me from having to come in and out of the actual color picker, which would take too long. And I apologize if anyone gets bored with this, but I don't know. I found that there's two different, very different sets of attention spans with YouTube. There's the people that are like, hurry up, show me a time lapse. I don't care about all this stuff. Just show me that, you know. And so I do some videos like that. And then there are people that, you know, like you weirdos, that like, I'm going to sit here and watch this guy do this for an hour and a half. I'm kidding. I'm one of those weirdos. Let's see. Yep, NDAs, understandable. Saying it would be cool. Watching Jim Lee draw number 1000 live was a rare treat. Well, you know, doesn't Jim Lee like own DC now? whatever, you know, he's top dog, so he can do whatever he wants. Is there a reason you're coloring from grayscale? I don't recall you doing it prior, at least from what I've seen. You're right. I don't do this very often, but pieces like this that are just sort of, you know, one-off, you know, things that I'm not going to have to duplicate again. That's the kind of stuff that I like to kind of experiment with, you know. So I'm taking the chance here to do something a little bit different than usual. And so we'll see. I appreciate that. Thank you, sir. I don't remember. Oh yeah, about the length. Yeah, no problem, man. It took me too long to figure that out myself, so I'm trying to save you the hassle of. I can't remember who it was. It was some. I want to say it was. I don't remember. I don't even want to say because I don't remember. But there was some colorist that I was talking to on Twitter or Facebook or something like really early on, and you know, it was like when I found out they're like, oh, I do, you know, 6 pages a day. I was like, I'll never do that, you know. But yeah, you can't rush that. All right, so I think I want to go just a tad darker. To let me make a layer that I can. Let's turn that one off. I'm gonna make a layer I can point things out, because without having a mouse cursor, it's hard to. So like this shape, I want to separate a little bit. Come on, undo. There we go. From this, you know what I mean? You know, this bush is in front of it, so I want to create some depth there. And all you really have to do is just get a little bit darker around it and make sure you're on the right layer. And it's going to make those shapes really kind of stand out from each other. And plus, this is kind of over here in the corner, so this dark stuff can sort of help to frame everything that's happening. But yeah, you know, pretty much immediately it's like, okay, there's some separation there. And then I'm just getting the smudge tool and just kind of pulling some of this up to blend that in. Something else that I see people struggle with that want to work in black and white is
and I'm going to do a video on this on YouTube here before too long. Like, it's on my list of to-do videos. That's very long now. But one of the mistakes I see from people that are like working in this method that are just starting out is that they don't realize that like colors have an inherent value associated with it. And what I mean by that is, for example, if I put a, let's say there is a ball on the ground right here. Okay, that's a little too bright. Let's tone this down a little bit. All right. Let's say this is a ball that's sitting on the ground in front of this thing's foot. Now, if I were to ask you, what color is the ball? You're, like, in the real world, given the current information that we have, what color is that ball? Okay, and that might sound crazy to some of you because all this stuff is gray. But we can tell what colors that it isn't, okay? It's not going to be navy blue. Like, it's too bright for that. It's not going to be forest green or a deep purple or, you know, anything that's that dark, you know. And if you look at it on the color wheel, which I don't have right now, but yeah, if you kind of squint your eyes and just look at the values, like these blues and purples are darker than these yellows and greens, right? So if we're going to say that this is the value of this ball, then we're limited to all of the light colors that could be. You know what I mean? So it could be yellow, it could be pink, you know, it might be baby blue, but it's not going to be like, you know, the same color Batman wears, or, you know, it's not going to be like a dark gray or whatever. So when you want to work in black and white, you still have to think in terms of color to an extent, you know, kind of in the back of your mind somewhere. You like even on this bird, like I know that I wanted his beak to be a little bit lighter than, you know, the rest of them, so obviously I've done it a little bit lighter. But what happens is when people say, oh, I'm gonna, you know, paint this red thing in here and this is gonna be red eventually, and then they do this, you know, that's probably a little extreme, but you know, they do some color like this and say, yeah, that's gonna be red when I'm gonna switch this to color. And no, it's not. You know, it's gonna be like a really dark magenta, or it's gonna be a, you know, when you try to convert that, I actually didn't mean to make that a color, but it's not gonna equate to, you know, some other really bright color. Does that make sense? So I don't know. The chat gets quiet, so I never know if I've lost you, if you guys are listening. But but anyway, that is that's something you have to think about when you're working grayscale first, you know, and that's why, like, you know, there are certain colors that are more narrow in that range. You know, it's like you can have greens that are here, and you can have greens that are here, and you can have greens that are, this is getting a little bit teal, but it's still greenish. And then you've got all the full range of all these different options, and all of that you would say is green for the most part. But like, what makes red red is very, very limited. It's all very like middle range values. If it gets too bright, okay, now it's pink. You know, if it gets too dark, it's brown or it's mahogany or something else. But what you would consider to be red is a very, very narrow range of stuff. You know what I mean? So, anyway, this is a lot to throw at you guys, so hopefully that makes sense. Anyone know the best DPI for printing on an A4? I don't know what A4 is. You'll have to explain that one. Is that a European thing? You guys like throwing around the paper sizes like that? I don't know. 300 DPI minimum is good for printing. Yeah, 400 is used sometimes. 300 is kind of the bare minimum
standard. It's not even bare minimum. That sounds like it's bad. 300 is the lowest you can go. But I know that I want to say like Marvel covers and maybe DC too, but I know that like Marvel covers, I think they color them at 600 because a lot of them they'll end up blowing up and using them in promos and stuff like that. I don't know if that's like a standard thing or if it was just one colorist I was talking to that was kind of complaining about it. But yeah, I mean 300 is a good place to start. I don't even remember what this one was. Yeah, this one's 400. It's like 12 by 9 at 400. So, anyway. I always think it's funny. It seems like no matter when I stream, I always have 30 people. 30. I think we got up to 40 last time, and that was like a Sunday. But it's very consistent. There's no commentary on that. It's just interesting to me. And I tend to kind of jump around, guys. I know I'm kind of all over the place, but that's just, I'm in a let's just have fun mood right now, so I'm kind of bouncing all over the place. Let's get back to where I was. Does anybody here have have any of you tried what's it called, Art Studio Pro on iPad? I don't know if it's on other devices, but I know it's on iPad. Boro Dante, who is another YouTuber, a digital painter I follow, has been doing. He did a kind of a recap comparison video thing comparing Procreate with Art Studio, and it's a very, very powerful app. And there's no like monthly subscription like Clip, but it looked impressive. I really haven't played with it much. Like I got it just to sort of goof around with it, and I haven't really had time to experiment. But I found out that there's a reason that like Procreate and Art Studio and what's it called? I need to clean off my screen. When it gets really smudgy, I have a hard time undoing. But anyway, it does like it has adjustment layers and it does some things Procreate doesn't do. I mean, it's pretty much Photoshop on the iPad, you know, minus a lot of features, I'm sure, but for the way that I use it and the way most of you guys probably use it, it looked impressive. I haven't talked to a ton of people that have actually used it though. Yeah, I mentioned it last stream. I should stream more on Sundays. Yeah, 'cause I got 10 more people than usual. And welcome to everybody that's coming in. Yeah, I'm really just trying to clean up edges at the moment. Like, I'm not even really playing around much with what's inside yet. You can always
you know, you can always add that later with color too, or fix stuff later. But I do want to get my edges better than they are now. You'll also notice that, I know I harp on this all the time, but I'm not getting like too close to this. Except for, you know, if I've got a really small area or something, but, you know, no one's going to see this like here. So don't get too caught up in details. That's a hard thing to get used to also. Very hard. But all of this work I'm doing now, this is something that I really had to, it took me a while to wrap my head around too, is I would watch these, I watch a lot of digital painters on YouTube that have nothing to do with comics. Especially like the concept artists and you know, game, what do you call them? I don't know, like game people that work on games and stuff. Because those guys, they have to be fast. You think comics is fast, like they have to be fast. And so they have a lot of tricks. They have a lot of techniques and things that you know, you really have to, it's very impressive to me. And so I think I tweeted about this a couple weeks ago, but definitely like go outside of comics sometimes for your art education. Like I actually I started following you know, YouTube just like randomly throws stuff that you've never really seen before. And I guess because, you know, I'm looking for Photoshop stuff, or I was looking for some other art tutorial, it recommended this channel called Pix Imperfect, like P-I-X Imperfect. And he does Photoshop tutorials, but they're like, did I talk about this last stream? If I did, sorry. But he does like photo editing tutorials in Photoshop. And those guys have a totally different skill set that I don't see any colorist using, you know? And so there's definitely a benefit to sort of you know, don't just look at comics or just read comic style, you know, books or comics tutorials. Like, there's some cool stuff out there. So now I'm like following a bunch of other Photoshop people and learning all sorts of tricks and things that I never would have never picked up, you know, otherwise. Excuse me. Yeah, Tim answered there. Clip Studio is for it's a subscription on the iPad. On the PC, it's just a one-time purchase. Thanks for the answer to my question on usable file formats. Oh yeah, I can't remember. Was that a YouTube comment or email, or they all start to run together? But yeah, yeah, that's No problem, man. No problem at all. Yeah, FZD School is good. Have you tried pixel art apps? I haven't. Yeah, I try to get to I try to get to all the comments that ask questions if they ask nicely. If you don't ask nicely, YouTube has this feature where I can basically mute your comments on all of my videos on my channel forever, and you'll never know it, which is, I think, cruel and hilarious at the same time. So there's probably some guy like consistently ranting at me on YouTube. I'm not seeing it, and no one else is either. So, but yeah, people get weird about like hardware and software and, well, everything, I guess, these days. But like, just use what you like, man. Like, just whatever you want. The video that it happens the most on is the most popular video on my channel right now by far is the, what's the name of it? It was sort of a clickbaity title. How an iPad Pro replaced my Wacom Studio Pro. And it's not, well, it's not clickbait because I actually explain it in the video, but it gets a lot of comments from people that are just offended, and I'm like, dude, it's a tablet. Like, I didn't slap your mom or anything. Like, if you like this other tablet or if you like this software, then just use it. Like, so much has changed in the last, even just the last 2-3 years. Like, we went from having like almost no alternatives to Photoshop. You know, there was, I mean, GIMP's been around for a long time, and you know, there've been, you know, Clip's been around for a long time too. But it's like we went from 2 or 3 reasonable options to like a lot in no time, and it really amazes me. I mean, I was noticing when Borodante did his review on the iPad, he had Procreate on one side, like running split screen with Art Studio on the same iPad at the same time. Zooming, he could zoom independently on each one, and he was recording his screen on the iPad with the iPad's internal screen recorder, and it didn't miss a beat. Like, that sounds almost impossible to me, like even now. But both of those apps use, it's called Metal, METAL is the code name or whatever for the graphics chip that it's using, and it's apparently like insanely powerful. I'm too close right now, see? But but yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing how far we've come. And you know, 4 or 5 years from now, like, even not even that, probably within the next year or two, like, these are going to be like full-on desktop replacement apps. Like, you know, we're going to have a Photoshop equivalent basically with all the functionality almost in, you know, on these things. I firmly believe that. So, and I'm kind of a tech geek anyway, so all of it's impressive to me. Like, I'm very impressed with how far we've come, and I'm glad, because I can use this on a plane or, you know, the airport or hotel, and never have to worry about, you know, running out of battery anytime soon, because the battery lasts forever. And you know, I just think the world's going to move to these sort of tablets. And there's always going to be people that are like, you know, dead set on desktops or Wacoms or Cintiqs or whatever, and that's fine. But yeah, it's coming. If I ever get an extra 50, 80K, I'll go to FZD. Really? Is that how much that costs? I don't know how much art school is. I have no idea. I know it's expensive. That's insane. Where is that school? Like, I know I've watched a ton of their videos, but I've never really paid attention to the details of like where they're located or anything. It's overseas, right? Like somewhere. Like the Philippines or Singapore, or someone will know the answer to that. I knew it was, you know, in that part of the world somewhere. Singapore? Yeah. So right now I'm just trying to see like what looks smudgy and what's not really clarified. Because some of this smudgy stuff can stay. You know, it's not going to be the end of the world. Actually, I want some of this to be a little muddier. But you'll notice that the closer I get to the characters, and especially on like the characters' heads, I guess these are characters, but the closer I get to their heads, the more detail I'm putting in. Strategic rendering, I call it. So actually I can go a little hotter on... I don't think that's actually completely white, so yeah, I can go a little bit brighter. Now something else too, like if we're in daytime, which we are going to be here, we're going to have some reflected light coming from the bottom side. So in some of these like really dark areas along the edge, like I'm going to put just a little bit of a slightly lighter color through some of this black stuff. Not black, but some of this, some of the really dark stuff. Because in reality, like, it's never just all shadow. Like, there's always going to be some light bouncing around in there. I want these feathers to stand out a little bit more. Because, again, these are the kind of things people are going to be looking for. I mean, they do it subconsciously, but yeah, I want to put a little bit more detail in those places. One idea that I'm, let's see, let me catch up on the chat. The program costs $40K, but the cost will double to live there while you do it. Yeah, I don't know, like, I mean, I'm not like anti-art school, but if you're like a self-starter type person and like motivated, then I think a lot of the information's out there, you know. I mean, I know it can be tough to find, like, you know, like full curriculums and things on the internet, but, you know, there's a lot of free stuff out there. And there's a lot of, not even necessarily free, but just like paid stuff that's not $40,000, you know. What is the guy's name? Mark Brunet. Like, he's got like a full, like, it's like a massive art curriculum, and it's a couple $100. I mean, yeah, it's not like cheap, but like, how far would that get you relative to, you know, spending a couple years in art school and going into debt? I don't want to discourage anyone from like getting a degree. I really don't. But it's something I would. I don't know, like, if I could go back, like, and redo it. Like, I don't know that I would do anything any differently. Of course, I'm not like, you know, I'm not Mark Brunet either. But but like, that's something that you know, it's cool stuff like that's out there. But some people need that. Some people need the lectures. Some people need the structure and like the discipline. Like, you kind of learn that discipline in college, or you should. You know, so. But yeah, no, I've definitely thought that too. Like, when I've seen, because I've watched some of their videos. It's been a while, but I think I'm subscribed to them still. And I've thought the same thing. I'm like, man, I wish I was in this guy's class. It's definitely a massive jump start for sure. But, and if you're young, yeah, it's probably the way to go. But if you're like me, like I'll be 40 in a year and a half. You know, you can learn a lot on YouTube and stuff like YouTube. Do you have a color palette picked out for this yet? Not really. I mean, other than it's going to be daytime. The bird's going to be, I'm calling this a bird, whatever this is, this creature. He's going to be mostly dark, and I'm waving my hands like you guys can see that. Like, this part is basically going to be black, or going to be the equivalent of black. Like a raven sort of thing. Maybe not quite that dark, but like I'm thinking on his wings and his tail, I'm going to do something like really, really bright, you know, some blues or oranges or something. And then his neck and his like his beak, I think I'm going to go blue. You know, that like really bright, like sky blue you see on some birds. And I think I'm going to do the same color on his legs. And all that stuff's dark-ish. I can always lighten it later. And the little thing he's chasing is going to be like a brownish color. But other than that, you know, I haven't thought about like I mean, overall, it's going to be pretty local color, you know, like the color it would be under just a white light or just under sunlight. It's not going to have any like strong kind of color cast or wash or anything. And what I will probably do, what I will probably do is have almost all of this, let me brighten this up a bit, have like all of this area sort of him like completely in light, and then have like some shadow stuff thrown back here, like from a tree or something, let's say, with probably some little, you know, leaf-shaped spots around there, just to sort of, so it looks like the sun's coming through it onto him. And but that's the extent of my my color scheme idea. I wonder what this looks like without the lines. I think it's working. But I'm glad you guys are sticking around for this. I was really concerned because I wanted to work on this tonight, but I was like, this might be too boring for a live stream. But sometimes it's better to color with some interaction. But yeah, the further back I'm going, I'm also, you know, that's the simplest way to create depth, is to just get lighter as things go back into the background. You're getting lighter and lighter,
And the reason that happens is because of all of the atmosphere. You know, if you look up, I look up pictures of like the Smoky Mountains or something. Like you'll notice that the further back that they go, then the lighter the mountains get, and usually bluer. You know, and that can actually help you when you're choosing colors also, because you know the darkest dark on his tail is always going to be darker than the darkest dark on this tree back here. So you can sort of use that as a almost like a ruler to say, okay, well, this should be lighter, this should be darker, relative to itself, you know. Probably overdoing this part, but there's a lot of stuff going on here, so I just want to get it close. And these values are pretty flat. Like you'll notice I'm not going crazy with detail in all these leaves. Like you sort of have to let part of it breathe, you know. Is that a Bob Ross line? I think it is. Yeah, and that corner is way back there, so you know we can use that to kind of frame what's happening here. I've actually gotten further along with this than I expected to tonight. I think I'm going to probably go another half hour or so. I've heard using the file system on the iPad Pro with Clip leaves a lot to be desired. Has this been your experience? It's just weird. Let's see. I don't know what I last opened with Clip, so I don't know if I can show it. So for a second, I'm going to turn this off and open Clip. And let's see, I don't know what that is. Yeah, we don't want to share that. Might give too much away. So obviously you can tell I'm working on my abstract work here. I don't even use this enough to tell you to go straight to it, but I think it's under I can't even find it. There's some kind of like file management, or maybe they've updated this since they probably have. It's been a while, but it used to be like, yeah, I can't even find it. There was like this little file management window you had to open within Clip Studio, and I don't know, like it was, I'll have to play around with it later, but it's not intuitive at all. Like, I mean, I know a lot of people like Clip, and it's a great program, and you can do wonderful things with it. I'll get all my caveats out of the way, because I know some of you guys probably love it. But unless you like spend a good amount of time with it, or you really look up like specific tutorials on, you know, things you want to do, like it's not an app that you can just like pick up and go. Like, to me, there's very little that's intuitive about it, and that's part of the reason why I haven't spent more time in it. Is it's like when I picked up Procreate, it was immediate, you know, like, okay, there's my brush, smudge, eraser, layers, color. Let's go. Like, and then the more you play around with it, and there's plenty of, you know, kind of hidden gestures and things in Procreate, but it's not that extensive. My problem with Clip is they don't seem to use like standard
logos and icons for things, not logos, but like icons. And so I just get frustrated with it pretty quickly. um, John Rauch, I don't know how you say his name. I've even asked him and I forgot. Rauch. He's excellent colorist. He's been working for a long time, 15, 20 years or something. And like he colors almost exclusively in clip now. So it's definitely doable. Like it's possible. But for me, it's like, do I have the time to like figure out all this stuff and get stuff done? You know? So I am working on it. Like I'm actually working on, when I have time, you know, trying to chip away at it and watching tutorials myself and reading material on it and stuff, because I do want to eventually do some tutorials on it because so many people ask for it, you know. And but yeah, I'm not a fan of, like, I'll give you an example. Like whenever you open up the lasso tool or the magic wand or whatever, this bar pops up, and like I don't even think you can hover over it to see what they all mean, but there's like 10 things on there. And maybe, you know, one of them's probably inverse and one of them constricts or contracts and one of them expands, you know. I'm sure all that stuff's in there. But like I'm like even playing around with it, like I don't know, I'm not having a lot of luck. Everything I'm learning, I'm definitely learning from someone else, or I'm learning from someone that has done the work. So it's just not a thing that I could just pick up and run with, you know. What is the weirdest reference you've had to use? Weirdest reference. Trying to figure out what color the inside of a skull is in a recently dead person. You know? That's off the top of my head. I'm sure it was Glitter Bomb or Hack Slash, one or the other. They're both can be gory books at times. But I was just going to throw a color in, and then all of a sudden I realized, I'm like, okay, I know the bone's white, but maybe I'm sure it stains based on whatever's, you know, coming against it. So is it pink? Is it gray? Like, you know. For some reason, I just wanted to get that right. But that's not something I do very often. I don't really get to that level of detail very much. Yeah, I mean, someone asked, I had no idea that I had clip. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely got it. I just I should probably hold off on the subscription until I've got more time to play with it. But I want to do like I don't even know if I want to focus on coloring with it. I'm considering doing, because I get asked quite a bit about other parts of the process. Like people just, they like my coloring. They ask, you know, can you do inking tutorials? Can you do penciling tutorials? Can you do lettering tutorials? So I'm thinking about, at some point, no one hold me to this, you know, in the next couple months, but I think I want to do like a beginner's guide to making comics with clip, something like that. And it's not going to get into, I don't intend on the first one anyway. I might do a couple or a series or something. And some of this will be on YouTube also, of course. But I want to do something that's more of a kind of dip your toe into each step of the process. So if you want to learn penciling or learn a workflow for that, here's how you can do that. You know, you want to ink, here's some basic inking tips. Here's how, you know, you can ink digitally.
some coloring basics, and then just the basics of lettering, just to have, because I know there are a lot of people that want to make their own comic, and the tutorials are scattered across, there's some in Photoshop, Illustrator, and all these different things, and a million different painting apps. And I think it would be cool to just have one place or one playlist where I can basically say, look, here's a good place to start, and it won't be expensive or anything. What I'm thinking about doing actually is, with the next course I do, I don't know if it'll be the very next one, but I think what I want to do is get the whole thing recorded, get it all done, and then put it on YouTube, like a video a month or something. So like if you want to get it all up front, and whatever it ends up costing, you get that all up front, and you get the support from me, and you get critiques if you want it, and all the perks that come with Facebook group and the stuff, the live classes, like all that sort of stuff that I do that's more just non-video parts of the course. Sell it with all that stuff. But if you don't want to buy it, or you're not interested in getting all the other stuff, you just want the videos, then here's a Gumroad download, and then I can also use that content on YouTube and say, or if you don't even want to buy the Gumroad, just here's you'll get a video every month on YouTube. And it kind of kills two birds with one stone for me. It gives me consistent YouTube content. I would obviously be doing other things along with that on YouTube. And it gives me content that I can consistently put out there, but it also gives a product that I can give people more, actually more support than I can just on YouTube itself. With, critiques and, all of that kind of stuff that comes with them. I'm thinking about it anyway. I think it sounds like a good idea. I don't know. I'm not a marketing expert. I'm just not. I'm just stumbling along, trying stuff, basically. All right, let's see. That looks like a chili. Oh. I don't know where that was, but yeah, probably. Oh, those little leaves, maybe. Is the perspective ruler on iPad Clip Studio? Yeah, it's got all the same stuff for the most part. I don't think it's missing much of anything. I don't even know where it is. That's how little I know. Filters, windows. Someone else can help me out if you know where it is. I can go look for it, but every now and then when I try to zoom, it draws. This thing is too, it's like dirty right now. I think the screen's too dirty. Yeah, Procreate has one. It's right here. So you can, say our vanishing point's about there, and then you can tilt that if you want, and then you can also click off and do like 2-point or 3-point perspective or whatever. And you can see the lines. I don't know if you guys can see that. Oh, it just froze. Sorry, bear with me a second. Every now and then, I think it's not even my iPad, it's this software that I'm using to capture the iPad on my desktop. A PowerSaw phone manager. Is that about where we were? Let's see. Yeah. I don't understand what it is doing at the moment. It just froze again. Okay, I gotta close this app completely. It should just take a second. It sounds like you've reached the old man point with Clip where you can't accept new technology. No, I definitely try a lot of new technology. It's just they need to hire a UI person badly. Because all they've basically done is crammed the interface into an iPad. You know, it's like there was no thought for... There we go. It's like there was no thought put into how do we optimize this for touch? You know, how do we optimize this for the iPad? And it doesn't use the metal API or whatever it's called. I'm talking about stuff I don't know about. It doesn't use that metal tech that the only 3 apps do. I think it's Procreate, Art Studio Pro, and I can't remember the third one. But it makes a tremendous difference in the performance. So like on Procreate, I can do this, and it might not be smooth as silk on the stream, but it is on here. And in Clip, you know, it's, you know, the rotation, like all this stuff, it's, you can feel the steps in it, like, and that doesn't seem like much if you're used to working with it. But when you go from Procreate, which is butter smooth at all times, and then go into Clip, it feels like you're dragging your feet through concrete that's wet. You know what I mean? Like, so that's another reason why when I do try to work with it, and again, this is just my 2 cents, but when I do try to use Clip, I just get frustrated pretty quickly. And especially when, like, I just don't have time. I don't need to learn an app. I just need to use the app. And so even Art Studio Pro I found was more intuitive than Clip. So that's just my take. That's why I do that. And the only reason that I'm explaining it to that depth is I'm not an old man. Not yet. That course sounds extremely helpful all in one place. Yeah, I guess I haven't plugged my stuff that much tonight, but yeah, if you go to that link below my head, I've got 6 or 7 courses on there now. There's 2 very large courses on coloring comics. It uses Photoshop, but honestly, I mean, you can use almost anything. Photoshop is still pretty much the standard, industry standard, so I used it for that. It's about 20 hours in 2 courses on sequential coloring, and it focuses a lot on storytelling and not just the nuts and bolts of, you know, light and shadow. And the one there called the Master Class includes a monthly live class where I actually, like, I give homework. If it's not, it's optional, of course, but people ask for it. Like, they want feedback. They want to. So I put some pages, some recent stuff I've worked on, like professional pages. Give them 3 or 4 to choose from, and then we talk about it every month. And I'll talk about, you know, different concepts and things that I don't talk about in the course. And then there's 3 different courses now on Procreate. There's a beginner's guide, there's an advanced guide, and there's a painting grayscale, actually. And it's all different. Like, there's really nothing that's in those that are on my YouTube channel. I think there's my flatting tutorial comes from the course, but I say that in the video. Most of it's, I mean, almost all of it's completely new, so I'll stop selling my stuff now, though. I know you people love it. But there are probably some students in here, I would imagine. You can tell them if you like it or not. Is butter smooth a technical term? Yeah, that's my technical term. Have you ever had Procreate crash mid-drawing? Not once. Ever. Which is insane. I think we're getting relatively close to being done here. I got to clean up the ground a little bit more, but I'm glad we got as far as we did tonight. So much of this stuff is going to be obscured in just deep shadows, so I'm probably overdoing this, but like what's happening between his toes is not incredibly relevant. So I want a little bit more kind of deep shadows under these leaves. And I'm just using the smudge tool to smooth out some of these strokes and hide my tracks. I don't know where I learned that phrase from, but I learned it somewhere. The stuff that makes it look digital or too digital, I like to get rid of that sometimes. So he would actually get a bit of almost like a rim light across here, which is sort of reflecting from the sky behind him. So we can brighten up that leg a little bit. Yeah, I vividly remember not that long ago, it doesn't feel like, maybe just 3 or 4 years ago, where I would be really confused about what to do in the shadows. Like, okay, I put a shadow, but it's not all just one color. It took me a while to figure out like reflected light, and the last couple of weeks I feel like I've picked up a lot more just understanding of that kind of stuff, and it's helped a lot, or I think it has. Why do you dislike the term making it pop? I know, I still use it. It's just in comics and probably advertising and just about any field like that. It's just incredibly overused. So, it's just one of those things that it's just kind of, it's honestly, it's like a running joke among colorists and anyone that's probably in any sort of creative type industry, you know, where you've got editors telling you to make it pop, make it pop. I know what they mean, but it's just lazy. Like, if you should know a better way to explain that. Like, if like, I mean, I use it jokingly, you know, but you should understand. Like, I was working with an artist one time, and it's like that's the only word he had in his vocabulary, you know, was, you know, it needs to be poppier, it needs to really, you know, and he was using terms that didn't really fit. You know, he was wanting to make it brighter, make it brighter. It wasn't, it was contrast is what he was looking for, you know. Usually it's contrast that people are looking for when they say that. You know, they want it, this horsey animal, whatever this is, to, you know, to stand off the background more, you know. So you kind of learn to just kind of translate to yourself what that kind of stuff means. This bush was like too flat, like it was really all almost one exact value, so I'm trying to break it up a little bit. Yeah, and this is one of those pieces where, like, man, we could spend days on this thing, really. I'm also thinking about doing a either on YouTube or a course, I don't know, like one really focused heavily on rendering. Because it's something that it's really hard, that's a hard thing to explain. There's so much you really have to understand in order to render things properly, and I've almost been, I mean, I've been kind of chipping away at outlines on ideas for that for a long time, and I've got outlines that, you know, I can work from, I know, but it's a daunting idea of doing like a full-on light and shadow, and how do you know where to put these lines. Like, I do want to do that eventually, but one day. Alright, so right now everything above this, all of that, like I'm kind of okay with the amount of detail, but the ground, if you look close, like there's actually quite a bit, little leaves and things, so I want to add a little bit of detail of that. Again, not a ton of contrast, like I want most of the contrast to be on the animals, but you know, you're picking and choosing your battles with contrast. Because it's you can't have all the contrast everywhere. That's another very common problem among new colorists, is they'll put the same amount of detail into these leaves, you know, they put into the eyes of that bird, and that's just not smart. Because then your eye has like nowhere to settle, like it just doesn't know what to focus on. And that's what we're trying to do here, is tell the reader where to focus without them knowing it consciously anyway. And you can see, like, I'm not even really being extremely careful in what I'm doing now, because, like, so you can keep this kind of loosey-goosey, and because it's a place where I don't really want you focusing a lot of attention anyway, so. So I'm thinking about just doing this piece like all on stream, so that you guys can see it all start to finish. It won't all get done tonight, obviously, but instead of finishing this off stream or something, which is what I would normally do, is there's not a tight deadline or anything on this. So what I might do is just make this the stream project for now. Let's see. This is... Sorry for not reading the chat. This is on the iPad Pro, correct? Yes. Would you recommend the new iPad? The new... I don't know which one are you talking about. There's like the new one. I don't know. I haven't tried it. I know it doesn't. It's not as beefy power wise as the iPad Pro. So so I don't know. Are you working on any comics right now? Yes, I'm working on Hack Slash for Image. It's written by Teeny Howard. It's Tim Seeley's creation, but Teeny is writing this arc, or this miniseries. And I'm also working on Infinite Dark, which was pretty recently announced. It's a Top Cow book. And just I've taken several just like one-off commissions lately, you know, covers and things for different projects and Kickstarters and all that kind of stuff. And you'll notice, and this is a trick that you can do on Instagram, that slight kind of vignette kind of effect where it's getting darker on the edges, it helps to focus toward the middle. One thing I really haven't thought about on this yet is cast shadows on the animals or under the animals. So I should definitely do that.
It really needs to be poppier, with a little more pop. Pop it out. Pop. Exactly. How's drawing on it with it? Because I'll mostly be using it for drawing. It's the best drawing experience that I've ever had on any tablet of any cost anywhere, like at all. So I don't know if I have anything that's like I don't think I have anything that I've drawn on here too handy. Well, I mean, these are more like paintings, but let's see. I mean, this was completely done on Procreate, like start to finish. I mean, this is a painting, a full painting, but it was a drawing at some point. I mean, this is all me. Penciled, inked, colored. So, yep, I'm a fan. I want to lighten. Let's see. I'm going to lighten this tree just a little bit with a big soft brush. Not that much. And I've been using Wacom tablets since 2003, and it was instant. Like you can go back and watch my video on YouTube. I did, if you search for like iPad Pro on my channel, excuse me, you'll see what all I said about it there. But I've tried Cintiqs and Surface Pros and all that stuff, and yeah, it looks like that froze again. Sorry. Let's see. I think it's when I switch apps, the recorder freezes. All right, let's see. Who drew this drawing? This is Steve Becker. On YouTube, his Instagram is linked in the description. I'm just putting a little bit more values, or a little bit darker values on this tree on this side of the tree. I don't want the darks on the tree competing with the darks on the bird directly. So I'm kind of leaving it on this side of it. So I think I'm gonna throw around a couple of just kind of hot spots, highlights here and there, and we'll call this a night. And I'll just plan on the next time I go to stream, we'll work on this.
And these I'm not really planning on like smudging away, like I want these to stay. And you know, you don't have to color every single feather. You know, like you want to do it where it matters, and your brain will fill in the rest. And I found that when you leave like the brightest highlights to the very end, it just has more impact because we're not smudging it. We're not, you know, we're not doing anything to, what's the word I'm looking for? Obscure it or anything. And so it really makes it stand out. Or pop, if you will. And most of that is going to be focused on them, of course, but you can sort of, you know, throw it in just a spot of it here and there, and it goes a long way. Like on this tree, these little leaves and stuff, like I'm not putting any time or a whole lot of thought into exactly where they are, because as long as it's especially in an area like this, it's kind of off to the side. Like it doesn't have to be perfect. Like you just want to hint at this stuff. But be thinking about any questions you've been thinking about asking you haven't asked yet, because I'm going to wrap this up probably in the next 10 minutes. I know I said 25 minutes about 35 minutes ago, but it's so close. I'm just kind of blending what's here. I'm not even painting this guy with anything new. I'm just spreading around what's left. Getting rid of some of that blockiness. You'll notice too that I'm not just blending it all equally. Like I'm blending away at the top, but I'm kind of leaving some of these harder edges in places. That really makes all the difference in the world in like making it look realistic, which is, this is about as real as I've ever done anything probably. But yeah, I'm digging this, if I may say so. All right.
Oh, I sort of forgot to flesh out on the right layer. This tree here, this is pretty flat. It looks like at some point I accidentally drew on this. It's something else that I can't find any other iPad app that does quite as well. Is Procreate has their own proprietary palm rejection, like tech. Like there's actually a setting for it in the iPad settings, like outside of the app. And it works better than anybody else's. Oh, you know what? I just realized that I never once stopped the recording and restarted it. This file is going to be massive. Whoops. All right. One last thing I'm going to do here on these lines, like, let's see. Right, so you guys can follow. This is going to be hard to see. This stuff that's way back in the back, I'm going to paint those lines a little bit lighter. And that will also kind of help, whoops, that will also help create some depth. Because the further back things go, as I've said many times, the lighter they get. And the pleasant side effect of this also is that the foreground pops more. Sorry, it's a stupid joke. Because all this stuff is eventually going to get painted. It's very subtle, but it makes a difference. Especially around the bird's head. It also kind of looks like the light's coming through it a little bit. So even if they're not necessarily far away, it's just the lights, you know, it's sort of like a bloom effect almost. So even some of this hangy, skinny stuff, we can lighten it up in places. Yeah, to show you guys the difference, like this is the inks, and then the difference with that. So it's subtle, like I said, but it goes a long way. I'm thinking about even doing it over this whole little section very lightly. Yeah, it helps. I'm digging it. I'm digging it. All right. Last round of questions here. Thank you guys so much for watching, by the way. What brushes are you using for this piece, and do you have a favorite you use? Yeah, I mentioned this earlier, but you weren't here for it probably. In Procreate, there is a brush, I believe it's under, I don't know what it's under by default. I think it's under sketching maybe, but it's called Flat Marker. I've used that for this whole piece tonight. The only other brush that I've used is just the soft round brush. If I want a softer effect, but that's the only one that I've used. It's not a magical brush, it's just a brush. There's a lot of cool brushes in Procreate, but that's the one that it sort of acts like a Copic marker. So I just like the way that it feels. Bit of a smudge there I didn't catch. Yeah, like I said, I could spend all day probably just on this part, but that's what I use the vast majority of the time. I just like the way it feels. I also like the there's a flat brush that comes with it. It's more of a painty feeling brush. This turpentine brush is what I use for smudging most of the time. Either that or the flat marker. I don't think I'm going to lose you guys, but if I do, I'll bring it back. Going once, going twice. So, but yeah, again, thank you guys for watching. You've made what could have been a very uneventful night a little bit more interesting for me. So, I appreciate it. And make sure you subscribe on YouTube if you want to see tutorials. I post about once a week, once every 2 weeks, something like that. And what else can you do? You can follow me on Twitch. You can follow on Instagram. I've got Instagram TV now, which I'm putting out a video every couple days on there because they're really short and easy. I'm just doing a lot of Q&As, and it's more non-tutorial stuff. Some of it's more personal, some of it's just answering comments, just that kind of stuff. And yeah, and check out the link below my face for tutorials and whatnot. That looks like that's it. But all right, you guys are awesome. Have a good night.